Welcome back to this wet, drizzly morning. It's damp. It's the first day of December. It's pretty not great weather for messing around with cars. This was beautifully dry. My temporary tent thing had worked quite well until I opened it, and then all of the water drained inside. I don't have too much time this morning, but what I want to do is work out exactly what I'm dealing with in that area. So I'm going to take the wheel off, take a grinder to it, chop out any rust and see how big the hole is afterwards. Wheel is now off. That is what's exposed. If you watched the other videos, you'll have seen me repairing that whole area before on the other side of the car, but these are the tie down straps. They're not for towing the car, they're for transporting it and tying it down, but they almost always rot out because they're not sealed very well, and that appears to be what's happened here. So that needs to come off. I'm familiar with that area and how to replace it. That I had hoped was good metal in there to use as a reference, but to be quite honest, it's probably gone as well, so I'll probably end up chopping all of that out, doing it all again. I've just made some reference marks and lines so I know where this ends and where that needs to go back on, so measurements up and down, left and right. I've been doing a bit more scraping, and actually there is good metal in here, so I'm gonna do this in two stages. I'm going to do that repair first, and then I'm going to do this repair after, treating them as two separate repairs rather than doing one bit. That is because it's quite annoying trying to make a patch that goes all the way around to here in one, and it means if I don't finish this in the next couple of days and have to come back to it later, at least one bit's ticked off. So that is my plan. This can all be chopped out now, and I'll leave that in there for strength and to keep this bit stable while I'm repairing that bit. A bit of chopping later. That's the tie down strap. You can see where the rust has got between the two skins. You have the inner wheel well, then you have a reinforcing plate with the tie down strap welded to it. Water gets in, sits between the two, blows it all apart. Common problem on SD1s. Complicating matters is underneath here you have the bracket for the Watts linkage, which can also trap water. The metal is good to about there. Below that it's really not very good at all, so it's all going to have to come off, and then we're going to have to fix it all again. But at least that bit's good, so I can use that and that as my reference points and build a new lip, build a new floor, put a closing panel, put a reinforcer, tie down point. Okay, progress is being made. Most of that problem area is chopped out. I've had to cut into the boot floor quite a lot because hidden under some of the underseal was pock marks and stuff, and it was just a bit frilly, and given that I had to remake this flange along the bottom anyway, it was easier just to chop it all out, and I can do that in one big hit. We have slightly more of a problem under here, if I can get the camera in the right place. This is the Watts linkage, runs from the axle up here to that mount. This mount is bolted and welded to the boot floor skin. What's happened is the boot floor would originally have come round up through here, and this is on top of it, but the boot floor has kind of disintegrated where the mount, skin and then reinforcer go. So there should be three layers: the mount, the actual whole boot floor pressing, which ran all the way up through, and then the reinforcer, which you see on the top side here. Basically the boot floor is kind of rotted out from between the two. That is the last traces of it over there, and I've just been picking it apart really so I could get to it and show you. But that is actual boot floor skin with a big bit of crusty rust between it. So what I'm going to have to do is make the boot floor, weld it to this, tie it all in together, and it just makes stuff slightly more complicated. Ideally what you would do is separate this whole thing from here, make the whole boot floor, and then put it back together again. But it's a little bit unnecessary because so much, I mean, none of this is moving now, let alone you know, once I've put it back together. So what I'm going to do is, yeah, make the skin, weld it to this plate which is still attached to that. When the side's on, it'll all be good. Right, I think we are about there with chopping out bits of metal. There is basically no rust now that I can get to easily that I haven't removed, if that makes sense. So I fully accept that there will be rust between that panel and that panel where the old boot floor went, but short of taking the rear axle out, taking that bracket off, and it isn't just bolted, it's also seam and plug welded. Don't know why, that's just how they did it in the factory. But yeah, because I can't get in at that, I'm going to make all of this section of the boot floor out of thicker gauge steel. So the patches that I put on the other side were, I think, 0.9 or 1 mil. This I'll do all in 1.2 because it's stiffer, but I can still work with it and fold it into the shapes that I need. So I'm going to go and get my cardboard and start mocking up. Meanwhile, I'll treat all this area with Hydrate 80 just in case there's anything in there. I can treat it now. Cardboard engineering complete. We have a thick steel plate. This is going to be a bit of a funny one to weld in because at the front end it's going to sit on top so that I can do nice seam welds onto the boot floor. At the back I want nice seam welds onto that bracket, that's okay. And then I'll have to fiddle around this bit because I want that to come up and be touching the back of here, and then this edge to form a new seam with this so that I can weld onto it. So that all needs to be thought about as I weld it in, and then the lower lip can be welded up while it's on there afterwards. But yeah, a little bit of a fiddle to get it all clamped into place. So now what I'm going to do is sand off all the old paint and underseal, both sides, and get the welder out ready. We are getting there. That is nice and in there. I can do a nice seam weld all the way along here up into there. Then I can do a seam weld all along the bottom up into here. That will then strengthen all of that area. Then looking from this side, I have the return lip so that when I come to put my closing panel on here, I have that ready. I will have to make up a second strip probably to go on there, but that's all good. And then underneath it all butts up nicely with that bracket, so that's good. And if I want to, I can put some additional stitches from the back side along here. I shouldn't really need to, but I don't know, might be nice to snot a couple of beads just to tie it all in together. Right, I'm gonna go get Mr. Welder set up, have a bit of a tidy up of my tools, get comfy and do some nice welds, hopefully. So that's that one in. That welded really nicely actually, considering I'm outside and the wind kept blowing my shielding gas away, particularly when I was working at the edges. That's all good. I've tacked a little bit of these just to stop it flopping around, but I'll come back and weld them fully later on. And then under the back, oops, excuse me, I did do a few little stitches in and around here just to, I don't know, strengthen it a bit. Probably didn't need to, but it's good because that seam is nice and tight there. I can poke a whole load of paint, and ultimately this will all be toshed full of epoxy, but yeah, I can put some Bonder primer or something in there, keep that all nice. So next stage is to remake the flange that goes around there, and then I can make my closing panel. That's the new bit to go on there. Again, it's made of the much thicker gauge steel, so that's going to be the new return flange, bit like a gusset, and then that will sit on there, be plug welded through, and then I can make my panel to go on top. So I'm not going to bother recording it because it's just more plug welding and welding. So yeah, voila, that is done. Well, I sound as if I'm triumphant. I'm not. It's just that that's about as far as I can get today because I've got to go and do other stuff, but it's all zinc painted. Next time I should be able to come back and put a nice panel in on there using my reference measurements, and then find some real thick steel to make the reinforcing plate, and then weld the tie down strap back on, which is over there. Then that little bit will be done. Then it's this righty corner there. Right, I'm gonna go have a cup of tea, eat some lunch, and then bugger off to all the other things that I need to do today. It's been raining all morning, and it's kind of soggy and damp, but it isn't actually raining now. I'm going to try and finish this area today. I want to fit the closing panel, the reinforcing bit, and then the toe eye bracket or lash down point. Before I actually get onto that area, this is all stiff and isn't going to move. I'm actually going to chop out that bit down there and excavate a bit of this area, because I'll have more room to swing a grinder with that bit open, which might sound a bit strange, but yeah, I'll probably do that now, and then I'll put it all back together afterwards, I hope. Been cutting away at this for a while now. Trimmed that bit out. That's not too scary. Well, none of this is really scary, it's just time consuming. I cut off this rear lower part of the apron because when I started sanding through it I could see filler, and basically what they've done is, either because of rust or collision damage, there's no welding gone on here, they've just kind of filled over rust, or rust has developed behind the filler. Either way, that had to come off, so I'm going to have to rebuild the bottom of the apron anyway. I might chop it off a bit higher because that bit's gone as well, so I'll just do the whole bit. That's not the end of the world. What's slightly more irritating is the wheel arch lip. It's all solid, like there's no rust or corrosion in there. There's a tiny bit of filler cracking out here, which is not good, so I'll probably sand that. In fact, why don't I do that now? So we have pocket marks of rust in here. I might take all of that off just to check and see what there is there before I make any further decisions, but at the very least I'm probably going to replace that section, which shouldn't be too difficult. It's the inner wheel lip that won't be difficult, but it's, if I pick all that off, what's left behind, because there's no point welding to shit metal. So what I might do is trim the wheel arch lip off up to about here till we get good metal, remake the inner wheel arch lip, put an outer lip back on. So more work than I'd anticipated, but that's kind of the way it goes. A jiffy later. It's a weird one. This is not catastrophic corrosion. It's got indentations here, so I presume that's rust. You can't feel anything on the back side, but basically that will have to come out. All of that's lovely. Dent there. Nothing down here, which is really surprising. That's where they always go. There's something there, but that's not too bad. So that's good. This part of the wheel arch lip all the way around feels really nice. So I think what I'm going to do is cut that out, leave that alone, leave all that alone, chop that out up to here. I've got something there, although I might grind that and see what it does. Bear with. Right, well that's just disappeared, which is good. So yeah, I'm going to cut that bit out, do that, chop the wheel arch lip off, then red primer it now before I do. You know, all of this is in my mind of what's going on, but it's really distracted me from down there. But I will come back and obviously address this, but it's nice to know what the next thing on the list is in a way. So yeah, I'm going to chop that out now, have a think, paint it all red, and then go back to doing that bit and put the rear lamp panel on. Excavation continues. I'll come back to that bit in a minute, but down here it's all good news really. That is all good metal. This is surface rust with the remains of cavity wax on it, so it's not that bad. That return is all solid metal apart from where I've butchered spot welds, so it's actually not so scary. So I'm very happy with that, which means the bit up there in there should all be good too. This bit, that is all a massive plug of filler. So somebody's gobbed filler through a rusty hole and it's splurted out the back. The majority of the rest of it is good metal. Still with, you see that bit there, that brown bit, that's the original sealer between the two spot welded panels, which is why I don't like dipping cars, because you get rid of all of that. So that's good. That should all clean up nicely. That lip will come off. So basically all of that is easily repairable, and along here there isn't really anything to repair, so I'm very happy with that. I realise there's been a lot of chopping without a lot of constructive replacement at the moment, but it's kind of the way it goes, or it's certainly the way I do it. Can't remember what I videoed last time, but I've cleaned up these areas just to see what the metal's actually like. There's a slight pinhole there, but other than that it's really nice, so that's good. It's more that it's reassuring that if that's the worst bit, then the rest is good. This bit, again, when I've been grinding it, there is a pinhole there, another one there, so I might yet chop that off and refabricate it. I've cleaned out and chopped up this area here, so you can see how I'm gonna rebuild it. One patch in here, which actually comes down and forms the seam between the wheel well and the inner wheel well, so that can be married up and brought down to a sensible level. The next thing I'm going to do is put Hydrate 80 rust killer on the rusty bits, and then I'll put the red oxide on the good bits. My rule of thumb when I'm dropping in and out of projects is anything that's in Hydrate 80 is mildly suspect and I'll need to address in the future. Anything in red oxide is green light, it's fine, don't need to take the red oxide off again. So Hydrate 80 in there, red oxide on the bits that I'm going to keep just to protect it all, and then I'll do that bit. I need to excavate and salvage that tie down strap. That's my zinc galvanized plate, think thick chunky metal, which will go on top of that panel, and then that'll go on top. patch repair made. That's clamped in loosely. I'll tack it up here, then I'll concentrate on this top edge first. It's deliberately left long here because that's how they are originally, and this lip needs to be bent round at 90 degrees like that all the way along and around, so it's left a little bit long underneath as well, and I'll do that after it's welded in. So I am going to go and get the welder, get set up. I've also, that's what it will look like from the back side. I just need to make sure when I get down here that that under seal stuff doesn't interfere with my weld, but other than that it should be quite easy. Fingers crossed. That's now in. I had a couple of issues blowing holes, one through there, one through here somewhere, but they're all tidied up now. Plug welds went well. I've tapped the rear of that seam round quite badly. Haven't got access because of the axle's in the way, but later on when I'm doing all the undersealing I'll do it again, but with the body lifted and the axle dropped, so that I could get a hammer and dolly in and make that return nice and neat. On the inside it all looks rather nice. I'll again dust that down with a grinder before I do the seam sealing and all that sort of clobber, but it's a nice tight gap, nice tight seam, sorry. So I'm happy with that. Again, that's made with quite thick steel, so no worries about that bending. Whoops, just trod on my ash pan and brush. Next is to prep this panel to go on top as like a stiffener, and then put the toe eye thing on. Toe eye thing has been separated from its original mount, painted in red oxide, so that's good to go. And I just need to weld it all together. That is that piece of zinc galvanized sheet, cut and shaped. I've sanded off all the zinc galv off because, well, certainly around the edges where I'm going to weld. It's not like Zintex steel, which is sprayed zinc. This is hot dip galvanized sheet. That stuff is incredibly bad if you breathe it in. I think it's some sort of nerve or attacks your nervous system, but either way, when you weld it you'll see what almost looks like cobwebs coming off. It's really bad news, so don't breathe that stuff in. That's the plate ready to go on over the top, so that will go on there. I've taken some reference measurements. I've put the beginnings of a bend in there and I'll hammer it flat when I get to that point, but I'll weld that in now. I won't film it because I'm running out of daylight. I can't be bothered to set up the camera and it runs down my battery, so I'm just going to weld it all on and show you the results. It's tacked on and I'm just going around filling in plug welds and stuff. I've occasionally been getting up and beating it from the inside of the car to push that skin onto the panel. I've also got my breathy masky thingy on because I'm paranoid about the fumes, so I'll just keep doing that and try not to die. That's on there now. I'm going to clean it up, take some more measurements and then weld my bracket on. The reason these rot out is because water gets in the back of there, so I'm going to weld it all three sides easily from here, from this side, and then I'll probably put a seam from the back underneath if I can get access. I might not do it today, but it will be something I do in the future. Okay, it's getting dark, it's getting cold, can't be bothered anymore. That's done, all welded in. You probably can't see, but it's in. So that's good. That's one bit ticked off. Tomorrow, hopefully, I can build that bit. All of the rest can be done from outside. So tomorrow, if I can get that bit done, then I can think about actually putting the whole rear lamp panel in, which will be a very satisfying job to do. But we shall see. I don't know, I might upload this now. If the counter looks like there's another 10 minutes to go, then I won't upload this now. Right, cup of tea time, tidy up time.